Dear Red Gobbo, for Squigmas, I want... Whoa! Welcome back to the Realms Go Fast, old Big Mek here. And that's right, in this episode, you are finally going to learn what I want to see in the new launch box for 11th edition of Warhammer 40K. So, let's get into it. Alright, so unless you've been living under a rock, you should know by now that Warhammer 40,000 releases a new edition about every 3 to 5 years or so. And we are coming up on year number 3 in 2026. And it has been widely rumored that we are getting the new launch box for 11th edition next summer, and that the protagonists are obviously going to be Space Marines. It would be a massive shock if it wasn't. They literally were in every other launch box ever. But also that the antagonists are going to be Orks. Now, obviously, some people have guessed that they're going to be Dark Eldar or Necron or this, that, the other thing. I did a whole video on why it's Orks. Pachow, according to Uncle Adam there. But yeah, it's gonna be Orks. We know it's gonna be Orks. All the leakers are saying Orks. All the rumor people are saying Orks. All that kind of stuff is gonna be Orks. Now, the other thing that has been kind of widely reported about this set is it's supposed to be some sort of a focus on fast attack. And that's actually pretty cool because that's not something that Games Workshop has done that much, and especially not lately. Leviathan was kind of more half heavy duty and half like either anti horde or horde. It was a little bit of a weird one. And then Indomitus was kind of into like elites, right? So we haven't really had a look at something very fast attacky in a while. And even if you go back to like Dark Imperium was very much like heavy infantry stuff, because that was of course the birth of Primaris and the new modern Death Guard and all that stuff. So what I have done is spent a long time looking at all of the data from the last launch boxes and what units are missing and what units need to be redone for the armies to come up with what I think we're actually going to get, or at least what we would get if I was in charge and had like a real budget and didn't just, I don't know, throw 3 stompas in, because that's the kind of thing I would do. So I do want to preface this. This is not a leak. This is not a rumor. I don't know any of these things. These are pure 100% hypothetical guesses. I am pulling this out of my red squig hat, okay? So don't go quoting these all over the internet like I know something or I'm some sort of insider. I'm not. Games Workshop doesn't send me squat. I buy every one of these with 100% of my own teeth at no discount whatsoever. I'm a nobody to them. So no, this is entirely conjecture. Now, that being said, I've been in this hobby long enough to have a pretty good idea of the kind of things that they're going to do. So I would be honestly shocked if it wasn't too far from this. I think this is actually probably a pretty solid guess, and a lot better than some of the other channels I've seen that are doing things like Librarian, Dreadnought, Drop Pods, and I don't even know, man. They're kind of out there. So let's get into what I think the 11th edition launch box is going to be. We're going to do the Beakies, and then we're going to do the Orks. All right, first of all, Beaky side. Well, actually, we should start first, box name. Again, the 10th edition, the current launch box, was Leviathan, named for Hive Fleet Leviathan. The one before that was Indomitus, named for the Indomitus Crusade. The one before that was Dark Imperium, named for the Imperium going dark. I know, it's kind of like Dark Helmet. But basically, the last few launch boxes have actually had names, which is something that they've been doing since at least 4th edition. 4th edition was Battle for Macragge. 5th was Assault on Blackreach. I forget what the 6th and 7th starter box was, but it had a name too. But yeah, but they've all had names, and the last couple have been this like big single name that's pretty darn cool. So, being that the narrative is currently going to Armageddon, and that's where everything is, Armageddon is probably a pretty safe bet for the name of the box. I wouldn't call it Armageddon, though. I think Armageddon is, other than like the fact that you've got the kind of cheesy movie from back in the day, it's just kind of generic. And Games Workshop doesn't like doing generic. So I'm going to call it Hell's Reach for Hive Hell's Reach on Armageddon, which is one of the main ones where all sorts of battles and stuff are taking place. But most importantly, Hell's Reach is the one that has like a lot of roadways and stuff going in and out of it. So if you're going to do a fast attack style one where we're focusing on bikes and buggies and things that move fast, doing Mad Max style, I think Hell's Reach would be a really good bet. So, Box Armageddon / Hell's Reach, here's what we've got on the Biggie side. Now, the last couple of boxes have had multiple HQ units, multiple characters. Leviathan had the Terminator, Captain Terminator, Librarian, Lieutenant with the combi weapon, and the Apothecary Biologist, right? So there's 4 big characters on that one. Indomitus had a Captain, a Lieutenant, a Chaplain, a Justiciar, and an Ancient. It had 5. And Dark Imperium before that had the couple of Lieutenants and the Captain, at least. There might have been another one in there. So like 3 to 4 in that one as well. So we're definitely going to get a bunch of characters. It's a great way for these launch boxes to add units and points and like cool stuff to build that doesn't actually cost them a lot of money to design and, you know, manufacture. So being that we are fast attack style, I'm going to go with Captain on Bike. It makes sense. Captain on Bike has been a thing in 40K forever and ever. Right now, we have a regular captain. We've got a captain in Gravis armor. We've got a captain in Phobos armor. We got a captain with a jump pack. Like, we have every Terminator captain. You've got every permutation of captain except on a bike. So let's put a captain on a bike. And you know what? He's going to need a buddy to ride with him because you can't ride alone. Nobody does that. You got to be in a biker gang. And to be in a biker gang, you need a librarian on bike. Now, I know that one might be a little controversial, but again, if you look at librarians, we have a regular librarian, Terminator librarian, Phobos librarian. Librarian with a jump pack wasn't ever really a thing, but Librarian on Bike has definitely been around 40K for a long time. Most famously, Dark Angels use a lot of Librarians on bikes, but they have been part of like regular old Space Marine armies for a hot minute. So bringing that unit back to go with the Captain on Bike, I think would be extra spicy and cool. Now, the other 2 characters are going to be smaller characters, and they are going to be standalone characters, and they're going to be standing on their 2 feet. Now, these 2 are the ones I'm kind of most excited about, because what I really looked at was all these characters that they're coming out with. Some of them are replacing units that have been around, but then like weren't currently in production, right? So like Terminator Captain is an example of that. Some of them are literally brand new units, all right? The Apothecary Biologist was a brand new unit, and the Justiciar was a brand new unit. So I was like, you know what? Some brand new units would be really cool. What kind of brand new unit could Space Marine Beakies actually use? And well, I came up with a couple of really good ones. First is a Scout Lieutenant. Okay, are you done laughing? I'll wait. Okay, are you done now? Okay, I know, another beaky lieutenant, but hear me out, okay? All the lieutenants that we have, they're all like Primaris armor guys, and then you've got the lieutenants in Phobos armor and yada, 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 right? We don't really have any lieutenants for Firstborn stuff, okay? First of all, they weren't really a thing in Firstborn era, but second of all, because the Firstborn stuff hasn't been getting a whole lot of love up until lately, it just hasn't been a thing. And I know that we have a Phobos lieutenant, and I know that we have the lieutenant with combi weapon from Leviathan, which is also a Phobos guy, that are supposed to be sneaky. This is even different. This is somebody that is like running a scout company. So think about like back to Sergeant Talion was the named scout sergeant guy from the Ultramarines that had a mini there for a long time. There's been a couple of different scout guys in the lore, and scout guys you know, kind of talked about. So having like an actual scout leader, a scout lieutenant that is like would be the commander of that the scout portion of 10th Company, maybe, right? Would be kind of a thing. But I think it would be a really cool model. You could load him up with like a sniper rifle and a bolter and a close combat weapon and like have him in this really cool pose, and he would have this like super rad loadout where he could lead snipers and all sorts of things. He would make an excellent lone operative guy to run around behind enemy lines and do really cool stuff. So a scout lieutenant is my first guy on foot. My second guy on foot, my last character on the Beaky side, is a Tech Adept. Now, I know what you're saying. What the heck is a Tech Adept? Obviously some sort of Tech Marine, right? Yes, some sort of Tech Marine. If you look at the progression on all of the Space Marine characters. There is a hierarchy, right? So in your captains, you've got like your captain, and then like your force captain was a bigger deal, and then you have, you know, like up to the company captain, right? Like they got bigger. Librarians, you had that. You used to have the different levels of librarian. They actually had like names for them. I think it was like the epistolary, right, was one, and then codicier and lexicanum, right? So they had different ranks to the librarians. And we even used to get those models, those ranks as different models way back in the day. And they've been kind of bringing some of that stuff back with these different levels of characters. And since we have two different types of apothecary, I thought it'd be really cool to have two different types of tech marine, especially because the current tech marine is really big, right? He's on a much larger base. His servo harnessing is absolutely gigantic. He works great with, like, you know, the turret or like having all the servitors and stuff. He's like the full-fledged tech marine. A tech adept would be somebody that was like a regular battle brother that is starting the journey to be a tech marine, right? So maybe he has a much smaller servo arm backpack, like in the style of like the 2nd and 3rd edition tech marine that just had the backpack with the one arm on it instead of the 4. I think that would be really cool. He could run around and either join squads and you know, provide some buff to them or fix vehicles, a lot like the Little Mek works for Orks. So I think a tech adept tech marine would be a really cool option. All right, with the 4 characters out of the way, let's get into the actual units. Now, Leviathan, again, our current box, had 5 Terminators, 5 Stern Guard, and 10 Infernus Marines. And Indomitus, the box before that, gave us the 10 Assault Intercessors, 3 Eradicators, and 3 Blade Guard Veterans. So there's been kind of this mix of getting a 10 of something that is maybe not quite battle line, but battle line adjacent, as well as a couple of more elite units. Well, I decided to go a little bit loony on this one. Now, this is a controversial take. This is probably the thing I think is furthest from actually having a chance at happening, even more so than my 2 new characters, and that is a tactical squad. Now, I know, there's probably some of you going, how in the world is a tactical squad a spicy guess? Well, think about it. Games Workshop threw all in on the Primaris thing back in 8th edition. They've been redoing literally the entire Space Marine line to be Primaris, and that has become a thing. But, here's the big but. When they redid the Black Templar, they came out with this guy called the Castellan. Right here. And he happened to be a brand spanking new unit based on the old artwork from John Blanche that was used in the 3rd edition launch box. And well, he is very clearly not Primaris. This guy is Firstborn through and through. And when he came out, people asked Games Workshop, is this guy a Firstborn guy or a Primaris guy? And they were like, I don't know, both? And that's the first crack in the armor. And you see, ever since then, we have been getting less and less stuff being labeled Primaris and more stuff just being regular. Think about the new Captain and Jump Pack. He's not a Primaris Captain and Jump Pack. He's just a Captain and Jump Pack. And they've started to include heads that look more like the standard Space Marine heads and the older marks of armor than the new current armor that the Primaris guys use. So Primarisification is still definitely a thing, but I think that they're rolling in back to some more Firstborn Marines, and especially that aesthetic. And especially when you look at what happened with Terminators. When they relaunched Terminators with Leviathan, because Gravis armor just wasn't really doing it for people. People wanted Terminators. The Terminators came out, and they absolutely flew off the shelves. Everybody loves the new full-scale Terminators. So you've got all of this love for the nostalgia, all of this love for the classic Games Workshop ethos, design, language, the classic Space Marine beaky look. Why wouldn't you want to capitalize on that and give us an actual tactical squad? Now, it would be extra fun. Obviously, they're going to be bigger. They're going to be more of a modern size like the newer guys. But it'd be a lot of fun if they mixed up the armor marks in there a little bit, or even just like individual pieces could be a little bit different of an armor mark to show that, like, these are the guys that have been bogged down on Armageddon forever. They've had to do battlefield repairs and whatnot, right? Like, these are almost even grizzly veterans, even though they're just a regular tactical squad. But I think a tactical squad would be super dope in a new launch box. I think people would lose their minds for it, and it would absolutely help this box fly off the shelves. Now, to go with that tactical squad, and again, instead of going elite, you know, Assault Terminator's obviously going to be a thing, but I think they're coming out before this comes out, and they don't really fit with the whole, like, go faster ethos or fast attack stuff. I decided to do a scout squad. Now, I know we just got a brand new scout squad that was Primaricified. Again, there we are again with the going back to the classic things. But that scout squad came out as a kill team, has like every option in the book. It is the full fat version, which is great. But I think there is room in the arsenal to have like an easy to build scout squad, 5 basic scouts, either with bolters or doing the close combat weapon and bolt pistol combo, but doing a squad of scouts. And I know it'd be a little backwards to do the push fit after the full fat version, but I think it would be a good call. I think it would add into this box, and I think people would respond and keep buying this squad afterwards, because it would be, you know, materially different than that really big kill team release. All right, that brings us to vehicles or monsters or anything bigger than that going on. In Leviathan, we only got one thing. That was the Ballistus Dreadnought. And in Indomitus, we got not one thing, but 3. You got the 3 Outrider bikes with the new biggest thing. So there hasn't been a whole lot of history of big stuff coming in the box. In fact, even Dark Imperium didn't have anything big at all. In fact, I think it was the 3 aggressors. Those are like the 3 biggest dudes in the box, right? So the Space Marine side generally doesn't get anything too crazy big, but we definitely still have room for some more units, and we have some room for something a little beefy because we're running a little light right here. And here are my ideas. And again, these, I think, although they are pure conjecture, I think these have some merit. The first is Scout Bikers. Now, again, Scout Bikers was a thing for a very long time, especially 3rd, 4th edition. Having Scout Bikes was a really cool addition to your Space Marine army. Ravenwing obviously uses lots of bikes. Scout Bikers were a thing there. But Scout Bikers as a unit in the Outrider style, you give them smaller bikes, maybe even a smaller base size to go along with it to make them more maneuverable on the battlefield, I think would be a super rad addition to the game and to this box. And then lastly, I did want to give it a tiny vehicle, and I want to harken back. If we're pulling on those nostalgia heartstrings and we've got a tactical squad in there, I think let's go whole hog on that 3rd edition love and do a new land speeder. That's right, land speeder. Now, Storm Speeder is still a thing, but it is absolutely gigantic. There's definitely room in the Space Marine arsenal for a much smaller craft, something that isn't quite as killy, but is a lot faster, a lot more maneuverable, something that can reach out and grab an objective or like go provide some fire support, something that can deep strike in, right? A good old-fashioned land speeder would be excellent. Extra credit if they did it as a scout speeder variant, or maybe had the option for either a regular Space Marine in it or a scout in it, so you could run it as either or. But I think something like that would be really rad. So again, the full breakdown of the Space Marine beaky half of my Armageddon / Hell's Reach box would be a captain on bike, a librarian on bike, a scout lieutenant on foot, a tech adept, which is a lower ranking tech marine, smaller base, 5 scouts, either with bolters or with a bolt pistol close combat weapon combo, a new tactical squad, 10 of those guys, 3 scout bikers, and a land speeder. Let me know what you think. Does that sound like a cool box? Would you buy that box? Or if not, what changes would you make? Let me know down in the comments below, and then we'll get to the orcs. Hey, you! Yeah, you there, watching the video. You want to have the same drip old Big Mek wears? You need to check out our merch store at theredonesgofaster.com, where you can get our cool new Red Squig watch beanie. Or Red Squig the baseball cap. Not to mention the Red Squig shirt. We also have our original water bottle in metal. And of course the dirty paint water mug too. But even more fun is the Go Faster design from BenBam, available in black, fun colors, and even the full color hoodie style. Get yours all today at theredonesgofaster.com. All right, back to the video. All right, for all of my fellow greenskins that have been waiting till now to get to the Orks, you've had plenty of time to put your guesses down in the comments below before we get to this, all right? So now that you've done your guesses, let's see how right you were on what you think I think that's gonna be. It makes sense, you know what I'm talking about. All right, again, we are on Armageddon, we are in the Hell's Reach box, we are doing Mad Max style fast attack goodness. So of course we're gonna lead off with a war boss on bike. Yes, I know Death Killer War Trike is a thing. I have one, I like it, I love it. But War Boss on Bike has been around for absolutely ever, literally all the way back to the 2nd edition Ork Codex. We even had named characters that were on bikes that were war bosses. So having a classic war boss on a bike makes all the sense in the world. It is a way better leader than the Death Killer War Trike. It is a way better standalone option than the Death Killer War Trike, and I think people would absolutely eat it up. And if you're gonna have a war boss on bike, you gotta have a war boss on foot. Clearly we're gonna need a bunch of war bosses for this new WA, so why not throw him in there? Now, I will admit that one might be the dodgiest guess on the Ork side, because although we are definitely getting a new war boss, and we know this thanks to the Uthak Blackhawk kit, the new war boss is going to be like a multi-part kit, like the new Space Marine Captain and the new, what is that guy called for the Eldari? The Autark, that's it. The Autark kit, like they are multi-function kits that have every word gear option in them, right? Our new war boss is gonna be like that. So the chance of us also getting a monopose war boss are actually kind of really, really small. So this one you could probably sub out with like a pain boy or a weird boy or something like that would also make a lot of sense. Okay, my other two characters, because again, on the antagonist side, you do also get a lot of characters. Leviathan had a Tyranid Prime, Neuro Tyrant with 2 Neuroloids, a Screamer Killer, and a Psychophage. So we had 4 in that one, and some of them were big. The Screamer Killer is huge. And then before that, in Indomitus, we had an Overlord, a Royal Warden, a Plasmancer, and a Scorpek Lord. So again, 4 characters in that one. And then back to the Death Guard one, you got those Death Guard characters that you still can't really get today that are like worth a ton of money. So yeah, lots of character love on the antagonist side as well. So war boss on bike, probably a war boss on a foot, but maybe a you know, pain boy or something like that. Let's do a mech boy, a regular old mech boy. I know we have a mech boy that's a multi-part kit. They're going to keep making it, and there's no new reason to replace him. But I think having a monopose one in the box is probably fine. It gives you an alternative sculpt for him in the box, or maybe you even make him a slightly different ranking. You know, since you do have Big Meks and Mega Armor and all that kind of stuff, you know, having a middle mech could be something fun. So, but some sort of mech boy, and then followed, plus that would get a good crossover with that Tech Adept we were talking about on the Biggie side. And then lastly, let's put a Big Mek on a bike. Just like our boy right here. So, Big Mek on bike was a thing for a little bit, kind of went away, became like a Forge World thing. But I think there's definitely room for lots more character units in 40K for Orks. We are running very, very, very small compared to even other Xenos armies. And bringing something like a Big Mek on bike back, again, taps into that nostalgia thing and gives you something that is really, really, truly super materially different than anything that the Orks have right now. You know, the Big Meks that we have, they're all on foot, they're all slow. Most of them are in mega armor or in a bigger armor that makes them slower, you know, as well. And yeah, like the units they can join, the things they can do are just kind of very heavy support-ish. So having a Big Mek on a bike that can keep up with the buggies makes a ton of sense. All right, now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this box for the Orks. Obviously, we're gonna need boys. That is the least controversial take of this whole thing. If Orks are in the box, we're getting boys. Now, I know there is a huge controversy with boy squads because right now we still get the old boys that are 11 to a box because they are multi-part, and then the new boys that are 10 to a box are the monopose ones. That the first squad looks great. The second squad is garbage because it's literally exactly the same. Only 2 models in that entire box have any kind of build option whatsoever, which is the heavy weapon guy and the knob. So once you've built 2, then they really are all identical, and so nobody buys them. So Games Workshop keeps selling the old ones. So it makes sense that we're getting new boys. But because we need those new boys to be multi-pose, everyone's like, oh, what are they going to do for the monopose boys in the box? Well, again, my powers of prediction here say that our boys squads are going to split into 2 data sheets again. Slug-a-boys and shoot-a-boys are going to be their own separate data sheet, just like they were before. So I think the multi-part kit that comes out is going to be a shoot-a-boy kit, because that kit is the one that's going to need a lot more work with like where the arms go and stuff to make them look different. Whereas the monopose-ish kit that's going to be in the launch box could be slug-a-boys with your weapons out. It's a lot easier to mold them in ways where you can just swap the arms in and out, and you know the bodies can be the same, and it's not really that big of a deal. So I think that we will get 10 Slug-a-boys. Alternatively, they could just call them truck boys or something like that, or even Ard boys, give them a little bit of armor. Would be really, really cool, and then just save the regular boys for multi-pose boxes later on. Options. But again, I think it's going to be 10 Slug-a-boys. Now, on to the vehicles. Now, here's where things get fun again. First of all, 3 Warbikers. We definitely need Warbikers. That kit is ancient. It is really hard to build, kind of fiddly, and if you're already making a new War Boss on bike and a Big Mek on bike, and you're going against other bikers in this box, it makes a ton of sense to have the Warbikers. No big thing there. Where I'm going to get controversial is the truck. Now, we've not had a basic transport vehicle in a launch box. In fact, I don't think ever, as far as I can determine. I've gone back and looked at all the boxes. None of them have ever had a rhino in it or something to that effect. So having it in there at all would be kind of a push. But the truck definitely needs to be replaced. As much as I personally love the model, it is way more of a scale model than it is a wargaming piece. It is absolutely gigantic, and I know that that mold is getting really tired. It's one of the oldest kits in the range, and it is a very complicated mold, so I know it is not cheap to manufacture. So coming out with a truck that builds a lot easier and more compact makes a ton of sense. But yeah, I think it's controversial that a truck would even be in here. I thought long and hard about doing some sort of generic war buggy, but we already got all of the named buggies for the Orks. Why on earth would they give us a smaller, more generic one? And what would it even do in the army? I'm not sure. I could still see something like that happening, or maybe even bringing back the war trike, or which is or war track, sorry, not war trike, war track, which is the one that was like the half track in the back and then the wheel in the front. But yeah, I don't know that they would do that either, because again, it doesn't really fill a hole in the Ork codex or in the units of what we need. All of the buggies that we have fill all the niches that the old war track kits used to do. So you used to get a different weapon to put in the back of the track or a trailer to tow, but now we have all the buggies. So you don't need a Scorcha one when you've got a custom booster blaster that shoots fire. You don't need one with an anti-infantry cannon on it when you've got the rivet gun on the custom booster blaster, right, etc., stuff like that. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to bring something like that. I really think we could possibly see, for the first time ever, a basic transport in the box with a truck for the Orks. Okay, I'm going to put one more unit in the Ork side, because traditionally the antagonist side has been bigger. Again, in Leviathan, you got 3 Von Lion Reapers, which were really, really cool, 5 Barbagants, 11 Aragants, 20 Termagants, and the 2 Rippers. So you're looking at, what, 36, 7, 8, 9, 41 models in the infantry portion of that. Whereas here on the Orks, we're just looking at 10 so far with those Slug-a-boys. We definitely need some more boys out on the board. What are we doing? Even back in Indomitus, you got 20 Necron Warriors, 6 Scarab Swarms, right? There was a lot of bodies on the table. So I'm going to give us 2 more units to do. The first is going to be Storm Boys. Let's put 5 Storm Boys out on the table with their rocket packs. That would be super duper rad. I think the current Stormboy squad actually holds up pretty well, but again, it's getting really long in the teeth. I could totally see them doing a new Stormboy squad and putting it in the launch box. It would make a ton of sense. It would look really cool. It would give the Orks a elite unit, a faster unit, something to move around. And then we need some bodies, right? You need some bodies to line it out. More boys would obviously make sense. It'd be good. Again, I could see them doing 10 Slugga boys and 10 Shooter boys or something like that. Or giving us 20 multi-part boys and letting us decide if we're building 2 squads of Shooters or 2 squads of Sluggas or one of each. Would be a lot of fun. But in my ideal box, I want more than just the same thing to build. So to go with our 10 boys, we are getting 10 Grots. That's right, good old-fashioned Gretchen. It makes sense. You had Ripper Swarms in the Leviathan box. You had Scarab Swarms in the Indominus box. Nurglings are a thing for Death Guard, even though I don't think they were in Dark Imperium. But, you know, it makes sense having cool little greebly little guys. Plus, they had those other little dudes that were like hangers on. Like the Plasmancer in Indominus had the Crypto Thralls, the little guys that like went through the crypts. And then in Leviathan, you got the 2 Neuroloids, the little floaty brain dudes with the Neuro Tyrant. So there's definitely like room in the box for like random little things. This goes all the way back. I mean, think about Battle for Macragge had the Spore Mines, right? Like you had a bunch of Spore Mines out on the table too. Like that was a thing even in that box. So giving us 10 Grots makes a ton of sense. And additionally, I'm going to be controversial with this one. The Grots are not going to come with a Runt Herder. Now, 2 reasons for that. One is Games Workshop is trying to get away from mixed toughness / wound units, and the Runt Herd with the Grots makes like their poor rules writers' brains boil. They just can't figure out what to do with it. But second is, if you actually like read Ork lore and look at artwork of Orks, Grots almost never have a minder. They're just kind of there. And it's like a random boy will yell at them or a knob will yell at them or something. And they just do it. But they don't actually have like a unit leader that's spurring them on. At least not like for every unit of Grots. So just having Grots that do their own thing actually makes a ton of sense, both rules-wise and background-wise. So that's my guess. I think we're going to get the 10 Grots. So again, to sum it all up, old Big Mek's version of the 11th edition launch box, which is going to be Hell's Reach. Again, this is pure conjecture. It's not going to be. In my head, it's going to be Hell's Reach. We are getting a War Boss on bike, a Big Mek on bike, a regular Mech Boy, a regular War Boss. Those are going to be joined by 5 Storm Boys flying around the battlefield, 10 Slugga Boys riding around in a truck, 3 War Bikers, and 10 Grots. All right, how'd I do? Let me have it down in the comments below. Would you buy that half of the box? Do you like that? Does it make sense? Do you think it's actually going to happen? Or do you have a better idea? By all means, let's talk about it. Because I think that this pure conjecture of what we think the launch box is going to have is one of the most fun things you can do in 40K right now. I've actually greatly enjoyed watching all of the other channels, you know, take their shot at this, even though some of them are so wildly out of touch with any kind of reality. It's still really fun because it's like, oh man, that box would actually be killer. I would go buy that. Or, you know, it just gives you ideas of like, man, I don't know, like it sounds good on paper, but that's like a bunch of really wild stuff that I don't know that I'd necessarily buy versus like, you know. So yeah, let's talk about it down in the comments below or over on our Discord server. Again, always linked in the description. And yeah, let's talk this one out because I think this is a ton of fun. And I spent hours just enjoying myself coming up with what these options were. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. I got to get back to work working on all this stuff for Orktober. No, you cannot see it yet. We are doing 31 videos in 31 days, and it is all killer, no filler, which means you are going to see a lot of Orks get painted in those 31 days, which is why we're not doing a whole lot of that in the lead up to it. So lots of stuff happening over on the workbench, which you are going to see very, very soon. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single one of those. All right, until then, Wargaming!